You're strong.
I know.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy. I'm Jared. I'm here with Brit. What's up, Brit?
Hello, hello.
And today we are discussing DC: The New Frontier, otherwise known as Justice League: The New Frontier, otherwise known as Retro Superman and Wonder Woman. So let's get started. It's written and drawn by Darwyn Cooke. And I may to start off. So, Britt, I'm sure you noticed this is basically a classic Green Lantern story.
Yes, it is. And I know you loved Hal and Carol, their love story within this.
Yeah, trust me, a lot of this is gonna. It's got my two favorite couples in this. So I'm like, yes.
Yeah, it was very
go ahead.
good.
Yeah. So the way I like about this is that it's based. The premise of this story is take the DC characters and put them in like the Eisenhower era of America, because this book tackles racism and sexism really, really well and not preachy because it's taking place in this time period. And we're seeing possibly the effect that like Superman and Wonder Woman would have if they existed during that time period. So I
Yeah,
really
which
dig
is
that.
right. These are the topics that should be, even in the modern era. Honestly, I don't trust the modern writers to make a story like this. Like DC has, especially their Elseworlds, it is so funny that DC's Elseworlds are so much more impactful than their uh main canon.
Yeah,
And
isn't that funny how like Kingdom Come, their best known stories are not the main canon stories.
yeah, and it feels like these are the kind of stories that really show these characters in such a way that, so many people want to say that like Superman and Wonder Woman aren't relatable, or that they you know how the boringness, or that they don't or the wokeness or whatever. And it's kind
Mhm.
of like, read this story, read Kingdom Come, even um
Actually, read
any
stories. That kind of
well
helps.
the, yeah. And it's like, no, they're very much woke, but in, again, in the right way of what wokeness means.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that
Mhm.
so many people have taken that term and turn it into a negative, when wokeness was actually about being aware. That's what it is, being aware of, the injustice in the world, and world dealings, period.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And I think X-Men, particularly X-Men 97,
97,
did this so well. Because the way
right.
you do it, honestly, the best way to do it, and that's why I've long said X-Men is like the gold standard of doing that. Because what X-Men did is they made it general enough. We're against oppression in any way. So that way, because all of us, to any degree, have felt oppressed or othered or anything like that. So here's the team that is you, because they have been like othered or anything like that. That way, gay people can hook onto the X-Men, conservatives in a liberal school, African American people. It's like, if you have been othered in literally any way, the X-Men are the team for you.
And they've always been. It's just the
Mm-hmm.
fact of, so many people have, they are so easily offended by certain
Mm-hmm.
things, or they want to hide things. Like that is the issue with the world kind of today, is like I said, being oversensitive and wanting to hide things. But
Mhm.
if you bring about it in a very civil manner, in a very respectful manner, and serious enough to educate, then
Yeah.
it will be something that people will latch on to and understand. And it's not being preachy, it's not being just like trying to make something feel superior or forcing anything. It's just being respectful. And it's
Fun fact,
just,
you know what I
again,
did? In college, I was a political science major, and I had one of the
hmm
best teachers ever. And this was around the time I got back into comic books for the first time in Form Comics League. So one of the things we did is call a directed independent study, where I choose a topic and write a paper in like a certain amount of time on anything I wanted. She actually told me, no, I want you to write on something that involves comic books. So I wrote an academic paper about the intersection of like politics and social justice and this stuff.
that's
I even taught a class about it. There you go on that. But I'll tell you more about that later. I may even do that here. But so
wonderful.
it's such a blast, and I've thought about doing something like that. But so this book is great for that because it's kind of like an alternate history in that way. So
hmm
continuing on, the other thing I love, so whenever Brit and I review a book, we spend like a good amount of time like ogling the art, and this book's art does a fantastic job of placing this in the time period because the way Darwyn draws this, it's very much in the style of comics would be of like storybooks would be in that time period. Like even here,
Right.
so we have the story of the losers, and the losers are like a covert like military unit. They even got a movie a long time ago with like Chris Evans and Idris Elba. It was actually not that bad. It was kind of weird, but not that bad. So the idea
Really?
is
I
that
will have to watch that.
it's actually it's pretty fun. You may actually enjoy that if you like conspiracy movies and all that. So the idea is that they were sent to this island because this defector that had information crash landed. So they get to the island, they like wash on shore, and they find it's like an island of dinosaurs. So essentially, they do move in herds. Dan, 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 dan. And so they essentially start fighting dinosaurs with machine guns, which goes just about as well as you would think it does. And they're like getting torn apart by dinosaurs, and they're like, I like how they actually blow a hole in a T-Rex, and it's just walking away. Like, nope, I'm not dealing with this anymore. It just leaves. And then again, I also like how this book is not pulling its punches. It deals with like death very graphically. It deals with like losing your brothers and some other political stuff later on in the book that I'm like, oh wow. It in other words, I like it when they do it in a way that doesn't hold their hand, because then it doesn't sound pandering.
Exactly.
So then they're still fighting it. And again, I also like, obviously because of the time period, these guys are like dressed in like traditional World War II soldier garb. I mean, even the loser book in movie is like in modern day. And there was a book in the New 52 called Men of War, which basically was modern warfare but in a world with superheroes. I can't believe
hmm
DC doesn't do this anymore, because if ever there is a fascinating idea for a book, how do regular soldiers deal with a world where there's like Superman?
Well, that is the thing that um the DL he quote and we talked about his quote of with the New 52, and just like he wanted those like westerns and romances, horror. He wanted those different genres to and mix it all together with superheroes. It's just, again,
Yep.
modern writers aren't very, they are very limited, or they limit themselves
Yeah.
into not trying to put these different genres together. The only really I would say the only writer is Ram V
Mm-hmm.
with Detective Comics. He put like Phantom of the Opera with Batman, and it makes so much
It
sense.
It's
Um,
confusing at times, but I am enjoying it.
yeah, but his poetic type, whatever, that whole thing works for Batman. But yeah, that is the only writer that I could think of that is really trying to do something different. Other than that, everyone is by the numbers. You have Tom King trying to do a little bit of political stuff, but it's not landing quite.
And then trying to claim his book's not political.
Yeah, that's just
I'm
kind
like,
of
dude,
weird.
you're involving politics in your book. It's political, bro. But anyway, so
Yeah. So,
so the idea is that the entire loser squad is wiped out by the dinosaurs. There's only one left, and then he basically decides, hey, I'm going out. So he basically takes two grenades, pops the pins, and jumps into a T-Rex's mouth, and the T-Rex explodes. So that's the end of that. So then going to then we see a test area that's like testing out the nuclear bombs. And basically what this is establishing like the context around the book, because first we have the Korean War, then you have like mutually assured destruction. And what this was the idea that we would never launch nukes at Russia, and Russia would never launch nukes at us, because as soon as they launch, we launch, and then both sides get wiped out. So it was kind of like the idea of we both have guns aimed at our heads, and we're not going to pull the trigger. At the same time, the original superheroes are like forcibly retired because no one trusts people with masks, and particularly any guys that wear red. So that's where the JSA came from. And actually, that's consistent with like regular DC lore, because I believe a few times the JSA was told to retire because it's like
mhm.
Flash and Alan Scott were wearing red armor, and anyone wearing red was seen as a communist. So there is that. And then you also have like a lot of the superheroes are told either become government stooges or retire. And you can tell which side Superman sided with at first. They actually, here's the thing. I like Superman's arc in this, because he starts off as a government stooge and then decides, wait a second, this is not working. And the other
Right.
thing,
Honestly, that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that honestly, the only way that you can write Superman as a government stooge or whatever is basically when his back is against the wall and it's like he has no other
Mm-hmm.
choice. But you know that as from a standpoint of his perspective, that he is just trying to find his way out of it though, and it's
Exactly.
not him actually being, which again Tom King saying that Superman is like he's the keeper or
As
the
soon as he
enforcer or
said that,
whatever of the status
as soon
quo.
as soon as he said that, I was like, yeah, I'm not seeing this great Superman writer that everyone's told me about, because Superman's not and hasn't been that way since 2012.
Yeah, well,
Well,
New
kind of.
52
Well,
Superman.
yeah. I was about to say, yeah. That's right. Rebirth regressed them. But my point is, in this book, he goes on an arc, and the thing I like about this book, because I like patriotism as much as the next one, this is showing the positive form of patriotism, not the whole rah rah, my country does nothing wrong. It's the whole rah rah, I love my country despite the bad stuff it's done, because this country is more than and just bad apples, essentially. That's what I love about this. It's showing that you can love your country, but also acknowledge that it has made mistakes in the past.
Right. And that is what needs to happen with
Mm-hmm.
Superman. The reason why he's not just an American hero, he is a global hero. But he
Yeah.
is from America. So
Mm-hmm.
it's that whole thing. Um, but yeah, you need to show just as how much, they want to demonize Krypton as a whole
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
take away that Krypton was a cultured planet though.
Yeah.
It wasn't just to change it to this desolate, just heartless type planet. It does a disservice. And for you to make it seem like Superman's whole, like, everything is just solely on not only Earth but just America is totally, taken away from the uniqueness of him being an alien. Is
Because
is
it's
it's
not like
not just that.
because it's not like he only saves America. But anyway, so back to the Air Force. So we're at Edwards Air Force Base in 1948, and we meet young Harold Jordan and his father.
Harold.
Harold Jordan. Yeah, his father's an Air Force pilot, and the way the story normally goes is that he was a test pilot for Ferris Air. Yes, Carol Ferris's father's company at the time. Something went wrong, and the plane exploded, and his father died. And I've talked about this briefly in the post-crisis episode, but the point is, that's what inspired Hal to want to be a pilot, because his father was like his hero. And then there you go. See, the father's going down, and then he meets like Rick Flag, and Flag is like a friend of Hal's father. And he kind of inspires Hal to like want to be a pilot. So then here we also have more like anti-superhero stuff. So we have Our Man. Now, Our Man's typical powers is he takes like a serum and it gives him superpowers for an hour. Yeah, he's very self-advertising. And then
I did not know that. That is
that's why. So he essentially has the strength and endurance mostly of Superman, but only for an hour. And they kind of touched on that in Stargirl. So he's being chased by the police because, again, anti-superheroes, and he jumps, and like a few and like him and the cops just fall off the building and die. And then we get more on like. The thing I like about this book is that it's very Watchmen-y, and that there's little articles throughout that kind of like show information on like what happened and like background information. And like this, you see, him and the cops tried to jump between buildings, but they just fell to their deaths and died. And that's part of why the JSA had to retire, because the government was anti-superheroes operating without like with full autonomy. To a degree, you can understand what they're saying. However, it's kind of odd. And then you had Superman. You essentially had Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. Except it's not. It's a little more complicated than that. And we'll talk about this when we get to the one-shot special, because that really elaborates on that. And again, it's dealing with like a lot of the other superheroes in like the world, like reeling from this. So then we cut to Korea, and this is like around the time the Korean War has for the most part ended, but like the word of this signing of the armistice hasn't reached the frontline troops. So Hal and his wingman are taking fire from North Korean fighter jets, and Hal is forced to punch out. And what I like about this is that so he lands, and the thing about Hal Jordan is that he refuses to actually fire on anyone because he's kind of a pacifist. And in this, you kind of learn more about why. And then we see Lois Lane just hanging out the front, which, in her defense, journalists were at the front of on the front lines many times, so it's not exactly like too crazy. I just don't like how like they always write her where like everyone does everything she ever asks. Because I'm like, there's no way a soldier would take a journalist out in a helicopter into a war zone.
Yeah, they do. Even if it is like the like you said, journalists and reporters were on the front lines. I mean, you see it all the time on the news of being in the middle of a storm or something, things like that. But the jumping the shark part, that she gets like just outright special treatment in some points. It's like, no, please stop doing that.
Because then they're putting a civilian in danger, and that's a bad idea. So Hal crashes, and the thing is, he lands right on a North Korean soldier, and he essentially gets into like an arm-to-arm combat scenario with the soldier. And the thing is, like, he forgot the words in North Korean for war over, so he can't communicate with him. And Hal essentially is forced to actually take the guy out. And this kind of affects him later in the story. And he kind of, and then actually it's kind of funny at the moment where he's picked up, he remembers the words for "it's over." So it's like at the time he didn't remember, so it's a little bit of a tragedy there. And I love the way they do Hal Jordan here because it's showing that, as it's going to show later, I'll give you a little preview. He essentially says, "Yeah, I didn't shoot anyone because I didn't think that this war was like big enough to take a human life." And that's actually kind of cool. He's a conscientious objector. Later on, you kind of learn a little bit more about that. And again, this is why this is actually required, in my mind, required reading for Green Lantern fans, because you learn a lot about Hal Jordan from here. I'm secretly trying to turn Brit into a Green Lantern fan. Trust me, it's trying.
It's working.
It's working. So then, so we have a scientist, and he was trying to like communicate with Mars, except he kind of transported a Martian to Earth by accident. He didn't know he was going to do that. And the Martian would, it's John Jones. And I liked how they made him look like all those old like aliens that would be like in those old serial and cartoons from like that time period. It's really scary, as a matter of fact. And they kind of do this in the movie as well. So then we go to Indochina, aka Vietnam, and we see Superman and Wonder Woman are doing like helping the soldiers. And so he shows up. He's a pile of burning bodies, and he's like, "The hell happened here?" He sees a like shack that has a lot of revelry. He walks in and sees Wonder Woman standing on the table, saying, "Come on, Cal, join the celebration." And can I say, the funny thing about this, and I'll rewind the panels so we can go through them, but I love how tall Wonder Woman is here.
Yes. Yeah, this really, honestly, with Cooke's design, it works for her to be this tall.
Yeah.
Any other, like, it really all depends on the art. I would say that the current art for her book right now by Daniel,
I like it.
yeah, she looks tall. Well, she is like 6'2" or whatever, but she's very statuesque, curvy, and everything. He makes it work. The only thing that I would say that her head sometimes is too small, like for her body. He tries to make her body a little bit bigger, give her a little bit more muscle, and so it's like kind of an imbalance with the portion, but that is, how she is supposed to look as an Amazon. But anything else, yeah, it doesn't work for her to be taller than Superman. Sometimes I just feel like Diana being equal height or maybe a little bit shorter works, but here it works.
And what I like about their conversation here is that they basically have the whole thing. So she was helping out, and then she saved these women who were taken captive by the hostile force, and they were using them. In other words, I'm going to be PG for that, or like the way they express it in the movie. And all she did is she let the men out, gave the women all the guns, and just saw what happened. And the thing about Superman here is he's talking about like he's very much on the whole orders are orders. You're supposed to be the example. And Diana's like, look, if I see an injustice, I can't just stand aside because orders tell me not to.
Exactly. And here is where you have the you don't agree with Superman here because the women were abused. And so yeah, if you don't supposed to do the evil for evil thing, that's what people tell you to do, whatever. But at the same time, if you could get back at like the evildoer yourself, it is practically self-defense. It is self-defense. So yeah, the women have had all the right to do what they did. Because if they didn't, they would have went to other women and they unalive children too. So
Yeah.
they had the right to do to yeah, what they did was very much in the right. And
Well,
for Superman
it's a
to
civil war, so it's like,
yeah, and
yeah.
oh, for him to act horrified, yeah, sure, it is horrific, but for him to act horrified and to act like they were in the wrong, that is the only part that I kind of like, Superman, you should know right from wrong. And
Well,
this is,
remember, looking at Superman's arc throughout the story, he's very much first drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will.
yeah, right. So this is the part where, and this is the part where Diana pretty much starts to, you see her inspire him in a way, or
Mhm.
like the way she talks to him throughout the book is, she give him the perspective that he needs. And and I love when when she defends the women, and she's still respectful to who Cal is supposed to be to her, but it's still like, I'm gonna do my thing, and you're gonna see that basically I'm right at the end.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, I'm just gonna reshare my screen real quick. The other thing that it really shows is that they are a check on each other, and that's why they're so great as characters and a great pairing, as a matter of fact. Yes, I'm saying that because it's like they both are a good check, and it was actually kind of funny is that in the new 52, when they basically hinted at the Batman contingency plans, they kind of hinted at this where Batman goes, "No, you're the contingency plan for Diana because you're the only one that can take her down if you ever need it." I also took that as you're the only one that could talk her down. So that's
Yeah,
kind. I like how they kind of deal with that.
yeah, because they are the two that trust each other, and they
Mhm.
understand each other, on an an emotional level and a mental level, and they don't have to physically fight it out. They can just talk. And even,
Mhm.
there's been a multitude of instances where Wonder Woman used the lasso, and she, can really get into Cal's head. And there was even an issue, I think it was Action Comics. It was very old. I don't remember the specific number, but she was his moral compass and his conscience, to basically, you know, be the man up and be who he is supposed to be. So that is a consistent thing that we see with Clark and Diana's relationship throughout this book and other books, and why their relationship mattered, whether you ship them or not, or like
At the
them
very least, their
platonically.
friendship.
Yeah, honestly, that is why we ship them, is because of their friendship, though. And it just meshed so well as being, you know, the I would say the epitome of work spouses. You
Yeah,
know, they have that relationship, and then to become actual spouses, down the road is a very interesting thing.
I love it. So then, back in Gotham in 1955, Jean shows up at the. By the way, I love when Diana calls Clark Spaceman. I love that so much.
Yes,
That's such a good nickname. So
yes, I love that part.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I love it. But so I like how Jean is like watching TV and he morphs into all the different TV people. Like he turns into Bugs Bunny at one point.
Yeah, th- I this it gave such a it's so serious, this, with the themes and everything, but it has a sense of humor at the same time. That is what you need in a book. It can't be all too serious, and to know the placement of a little bit of humor. I mean, how random is that? Is for Bugs Bunny to show up in the Justice League book.
Well, it's Warner Brothers, so it's not all that more unbelievable. But I see what you're saying. It is kind of funny about that. So
Yeah.
then, on TV, Jean is seeing all the stuff about about like anti-alien sentiment, and at the same time we see like Flash stuff. And what's kind of funny, so what this is showing is like it's like Barry Allen and he's reading Flash comics, because that originally the way that they originally did this is that when they transitioned to when they first introduced Barry Allen, he named himself the Flash after Jay Garrick, because Jay Garrick was his favorite comic book character. And the way they explained that was that when the creator of the Flash in the comics was asleep, somehow he got like images of Earth 2 in his subconscious, so that's what he was writing on as the stuff on Earth 2. It's confusing as hell, but then again, so is the entire multiverse.
Exactly, and it is confusing, but very interesting. Like, who was the writer that came up with that? That is such a, I don't know. It's like it's trying to make Earth 2, or seem like the fictional character within the fictional world, but at the same time we know that he's very much real. So that is a very interesting type concept, and yeah, that just makes the multiverse even more complicated. So
It's still fun, and it's all really cool. And the reason why they did that is because they wanted to, like, because around this time, this is when everyone's interested in science. They were like, let's scienceify our heroes. So they gave Barry Allen the police investigator thing. And they would even have like flash facts, like they said in the documentary, which would be like real science. And then Hal Jordan became the Green Lantern because he was like a test pilot and all that. But anyway, back to Gotham. John Jones, a police detective, is rushing off with his partner to a crime scene. They walk in and they see Batman beating the crap out of some cultists. It's kind of funny. Nowadays, if they were to redo this would probably be the Court of Owls right about now.
yes,
That's kind of what they
that
became.
would be.
So he's trying to save this kid from being sacrificed. So yeah, this book even has child sacrifice. Wow. And then we see Jean is like afraid of fire. Now here's the thing. They've changed this over and over again. It's either Jean is actually like fire will kill him, like everyone else, but that's the point, or he's just afraid of fire. So they've kind of played with either of those in the comics many times. So I believe here it's that he's weak to fire. It would be.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't that he would die. It's just the fact of, yeah, like a weakness. Kind of, well, it is his kryptonite. But yeah, it was never like to really hurt him in a sense of like, yeah, he's going to die. It's just I don't understand the concept of weakening either. But yeah, I thought that that's only what it was to be.
So then Batman saves the kid. Now here's the interesting thing. The kid's afraid of Batman. And this is what I like about this, because a lot of this story is just cause and effect, because the kid's afraid of Batman, and this will inspire him to take a Robin and then have a less threatening appearance. So I really like how like this story sets stuff up that will be like paid off later. It's really, really cool how Darwyn does this. And then the head cultist goes, your swine shall be judged as well. Without the center, there is no holding. And the center is basically a big-ass alien island. So there is that. Then Las Vegas. And then we cut to an interesting character. I'm not sure if you've heard about him. Well, first off, we also have Ted Grant, the Wildcat, who is a member of the JSA. And I believe in the comics, he is one of the combat instructors for the Justice League. Like, he taught everyone how to fight. I think he even taught Batman how to fight during his training.
Yes.
And he's like a boxer. And then we see like we see like little snippets of his life. He's like hanging out with like ladies, and he gets punched. Well, actually, he was being hallucinating. Then over here we see like, hey, Selena Kyle. Then we also see, I believe, is that Carol Ferris? That might be Carol. Yeah, and then we see Hal. So I like how this book like introduces all these characters that, yeah, it's small cameos, but still, I really enjoy like how they do this. And then another thing for the art, I love how he draws water for some reason. It's so simple, but it looks so vivid.
Yeah, right. And also going back to what you said about the cameos, it the placement of everything, and even with how he set up for Batman to take on a Robin, it it's kind of like all the heroes, they have lessons, to learn, and you can
Hmm.
actually go through it with them. And all he's balancing out all these character arcs, and this character progression and everything like that, in such a well balanced type way that you don't feel like anyone it's not overstuffed or anything like that. And yeah, even with the cameos, it just feels like you're building the world, and you're trying to show and succeeding to show how wide this world is, that everyone that you maybe wouldn't think of, or maybe you would think of, they do exist in this world. And all you need is probably like, yeah, a panel or two to know, what stage they're in within their character.
Yeah, I
And so
mean,
that is really good.
you even have what's kind of funny. Selena's wearing a purple dress, like her original outfit when she first got introduced. And there's
Yeah,
also a character named Dinah. I wonder who that is. Maybe the
yeah,
canary.
and she was a mentee for Ted. So that
Yeah.
having her there makes sense.
And by the way, I don't think this is the Dinah that you and I know, because remember, if I remember correctly,
Dinah
Dinah,
Lance.
yeah,
And
Dinah got the idea for being called Black Canary from, I think, her mother, who was the original Black Canary.
right. So, this might be the original Black Canary instead of uh well, I think it shows who this Dinah is in the special.
Yeah, and we'll get to there. So all I know is that based on the time period, this would be the same Canary from the JSA World War II movie, based on the time
So that's
period.
yeah. So that's Canary, the original Canary.
Yeah, original Canary. That is correct. Plus, I think Dinah's a natural blonde. At least the modern one is, and this one's a brunette that probably wears like a wig. So Ted
That's
wins,
right. Yeah.
and then cut to Las Vegas, and we have like Hal Jordan is like telling old war stories about his time as a fighter pilot. And again, you see like a lot of other interesting characters. Like, oh, you probably don't know this guy, Oliver Queen. And we see Bruce Wayne and Lois Lane. There's so many different. Again, I to that point, because it's very easy to put all these arcs in there. The hard part is trying to make sure it doesn't seem like too much for one story. And again, he does it so well. And even if it's like one panel for a character, because he's showing that this world is basically the DC universe that you know, except it's just taken and moved into the past a little bit. And it's really well done. Then we see our good friend Barry Allen, the Flash. He's just hanging out at his apartment, and then he's talking to Iris, his girlfriend, who's like a journalist. She, as far as he knows, she doesn't know he's the Flash yet, and I
Right.
believe they were just engaged according to this. And then the hotel is attacked by Captain Cold, and so her hand is frozen. Which, by the way, that hand would be destroyed right about now because of frostbite. But hey, it's a comic book. I have to be
You
that
have to
guy.
turn half. I always tell you that you have to turn half your brain off to just go with it.
Yeah, and this is one of the occasions where it's fun, just go with it, and not just like this is a crappy plot that we're trying to hide. It's a great plot. So then
Yeah.
Barry takes off, and here's the other turn off your brain. How does he fit a costume in a ring? It's like,
I don't know.
okay, I,
Again, it's very much just go with it, and maybe the suit like is just very extra tiny. And I was it Barry a chemist?
Yeah,
at one point.
I think the way the suit works is that it's made of special chemicals that expand when exposed to the air.
Yeah, so it might have something to do scientific.
I'm sure. Because science, that's why. But can I
Yeah.
say I love the way he draws speed. I mean, because that's a tough thing to do with the Flash, because you want it to look like unique and cool, but you also don't want it to make it to look outlandish. A lot of writers have succeeded in making it look cool, like Francis Manapul and Howard Porter. But this I love because it it essentially, again, it looks classic. A lot of the ways that this book is drawn, it feels like a comic book of the 60s.
Yeah.
Love it. And then Flash comes in, and I love, so his idea, okay, I got to get her hand out. So he like rubs and uses fiction to melt it, gives her a nice kiss on the cheek, and then goes to work. And then the idea is that Captain Cold went, I hit bombs all over Las Vegas. You have to stop them, or you can stop them or stop me. Pick. And Barry's like, okay, fine. So he runs out and gets all the bombs. And then again, see, I love how he draws speed in this bottom panel, because you can see him like going through every inch of this place. He checks it out. He essentially wraps the bombs in a balloon and makes them fly up into the air, and then catches he catches Captain Cold, and then he goes, and then actually what's kind of funny is Cold had basically said, okay, so there's like, let's say 8 bombs. There's actually 7. He only said 8 because he knew Barry would be delayed trying to find the other bombs. So there's that, and it's smart. And then I also like how like the bombs explode, but it really just creates like a snowstorm. So it's snowing in Las Vegas for the first time. And then we have Hal Jordan being a very reckless driver. He's somehow figured out a way to drive a car on a wall. So there is that.
That is very cartoony. That really shows how, like I said, this book has such a seriousness to it, but in some ways the goofiness and the comedy, is in the right placement. And driving a car on a wall or whatever is very much Looney Tunes.
Yeah, exactly. And then we see like Hal Jordan is talking about like the Flash guy, and it's like there's not as many superheroes as they are. It's like a few of them have not are like not in commission, or they're like in hiding because of what the government did. And we're seeing that like the OG Justice League of like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman are starting to inspire all of these characters to like essentially come out of the shadows and become superheroes again. And Wonder Woman basically hints at this later in the book, and we'll talk about that there. And the other thing that like we get a little more into Hal's character in this book, because he's been called a coward his entire life because he wouldn't take a life in the war. And like they thought he was crazy because of what happened in over there in Korea. And again, it's just he said I couldn't find an actual reason to take a life, because you need a reason to take a life in a war. And here's the thing, he gets his reason later, and it's actually really cool. And then he talks about also always wanting to go into space, and I wonder if he'll get that chance, maybe maybe with a green ring, who knows. And then he also gets to interview for Ferris Aircraft, and we'll see that later. Then here we have a plane crashing again is this in Dinosaur Island? Actually, no, this is dealing with like a guy named Rex Ryan, who's like a daredevil. And again, a lot of this is just like tiny snippets of other like stories and DC characters, again, to show you that these characters exist. Then I love this. Hal is having lunch with Carol Ferris. It's essentially a job interview. It's very like swanky for a job interview, but I'll take it. And
it's definitely a half date.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I love this where it's this line where, so the interview goes well, And then she goes, hey, he basically says, hey, let's have another glass of wine to celebrate. And she goes, I'm sorry, Hal. I mean, I have a policy. I don't date employees. And then Hal goes, technically, I'm not an employee for another week. And she says, okay, 2 glasses. And again, I love the dynamic between these two, particularly in the regular comics, because in the regular comics, they have been close friends since they were children. And they've always felt like this attraction, but it didn't feel like the right time. And then it's like he was there for her when her father, because what happened is that after Hal's father was killed, her father, who was Hal's dad's boss, got really sick because he felt so guilty because he blamed himself for what happened to Hal's dad, that he actually practically was in a coma, and Carol had to run the company herself. And he always says that, like, after what happened, my father always considered you a son. So it's actually really emotional with Hal Jordan. And then they bonded because, actually, tell me if this feels familiar. They bonded because they felt alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That is
so really,
why,
when you think about it, this is SuperWonder again.
yeah, honestly, most of the more super couples that understand each other, they in on levels have the same dynamic. Like, especially Aquaman and Mira,
Mm-hmm.
Arthur and Mira. It's a man, he's, part of 2 different worlds, and land and sea, and he's trying to understand the world of the sea. And you have Mira, who understands that other world, otherworldliness, and helps him, you know, to
Well,
really understand his purpose. And that's the same thing Diana does for Cal, and it's the same thing um Carol does for Hal.
Well, the other
And
thing, it's also pretty interesting when you talk about Arthur and Mara, because Mara was originally sent to kill Arthur.
yeah, well, that's why I said, on different levels they
Mm-hmm.
have, however they come about, and even that hers is a little extreme, but they still, and the thing is, they have the longest running marriage
Mm-hmm.
within DC, but of course, their marriage and their, relationship as a whole is very much disregarded because, of course, they want to prop up Superman and Lois as like this long running marriage, but no, it that has not been, as long as other couples have been. DC has plenty of couples that are much better, miles better than that, and has so much more depth. And the more you talk about Carol and Hal, you see that depth is that they were, best friends since childhood. They were and understand each other's loss, how it's with their fathers and everything, and becoming lanterns and understanding that whole thing. Then again, Arthur and Mira understanding that world of the sea, and you know being there for each other. um Diana and Clark the same way. They understand that otherworldliness of being perceived as gods, but they're not. Um, and then you have Bruce and Selena. They love Gotham. Um, 2 different spectrums of Bruce being the rich guy and Selena being more of like the street girl, but they both come together because they love Gotham.
Exactly. Then we cut to, I think it's Booster Gold, but it'll be a lot of I think, because a lot of these characters are like, I'm kind of going to skimming through a lot of the minor characters to focus on particularly Superman and Wonder Woman for this story, because this podcast. But the point is, there's a lot to go over. But also here, speaking of like dealing with political issues, this is when they start to deal with certain things. You have a character named John Henry. It's basically John Henry Irons, and he was like a dude that was that the a certain group of people in white hoods tried to lynch him, and it didn't work. And what's actually kind of cool is in his superhero costume, he wore the rope around his neck as like a badge of honor and something like that, saying, I'm coming after you, essentially. So they're kind of like interspersing that
Yeah,
there.
wasn't he a character, if I'm not mistaken? I don't know if it was the HBO Watchmen series.
Was he? I never watched that series. I'm wondering
Yeah,
about that.
it or it was another show with the same character.
I know
I
he
will
was in
have to.
Superman and Lois.
Let me see. Wait, John Henry, this version or
No. Not this version. Not this version. He was a
let's
dude
see.
from another multiversal Earth.
I thought he was, oh, that one that's with Lena now. I thought, wasn't they trying to make him like Lex though at first?
Okay, so what happened is I think he stole a ship from Lex to get to the Earth, and it had him calling him Captain Luthor. So we all thought it was Lex, but then it's
Oh,
revealed that it's actually John Henry.
so it was a red herring, or it was the fact that they probably like last minute change.
Yeah, probably. So then we see. So it's actually kind of interesting is that we're starting to see a little bit of the plot coming in. So we're starting to see these dinosaurs all of a sudden attack people, and everyone's like, "Wait a second, dinosaur in New York, mind you." And everyone's like, "Well, that's weird," and it'll be reveal what that is later. And then, so what John Henry does is he makes a hammer and he goes after all the racists. Godspeed, sir. Go ahead. And then we deal with the challenges of the unknown. Now, what's kind of funny about the challenges of the unknown is they're basically DC's version of the Fantastic Four. And what's also kind of funny is, so you know who Cyborg Superman is, right?
Yeah.
So the character he actually is named Hank Henshaw. When he was created, that was basically a way to say F you to Stan Lee. So what they did is that they had him and three other people have the same origin of the Fantastic Four, but it actually kills his wife with radiation, turns his friend into a rock monster, and his wife's brother like bursts into flames and dies. So essentially, they're saying if people were exposed to cosmic rays, here's what would actually happen. And then he got downloaded into like a machine, and that's how he became Cyborg Superman.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
So so it's two different
Okay.
characters, which is they have the same um design though. But the character in Watchmen was Hooded Justice.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's kind of like this seems familiar. I'm like that wouldn't be the same character, and I knew it wouldn't be, but yeah, it's just the same design, which is very interesting.
They
It's
probably based it off of that, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think it's very much based the design at least, not the background or, the character purpose, but the design is very much similar and I think probably took cues from that for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So then we see, so the challenges of the unknown show up on Dinosaur Island, and we see the losers from the beginning of the book. They had basically like drawn up a thing. Here's what happened to us, and then they're attacked by like a T-Rex, and this is when they're basically like teasing what the whole center is. So Hal shows up at Ferris Air, and he reports like astronaut training. So apparently what they're doing for like training involves like, I think this is re-entry training. So they just drop them in a capsule into the water to say, here's what's going to happen when you land. And he passes the training. And again, I like a lot of what Darwyn does with like visuals, because if you look even here, it's like inside, it looks like he's like in a little air pocket underwater. It's really cool how he does this.
Yeah.
And then basically he gets information on like soldiers shot down and like nuclear bombs. And then we see Flag, who feels like guilty about his soldiers dying. Then we see more about John Henry, and they're dealing, and then he's fighting people who are lynching, and then there he is. He's got the helmet, he's got the mask, the bag over his head, like he's being hanged. He's got the rope, and then he has a hammer, and he just beats the crap out of these guys, and that just looks so badass. Like I love that so much. And the way he the way the fire is behind him, and the way he's like, nope, I got this. Come at me, bro. I love that. And I'm glad they were. See, it's the other thing. When they bring in these characters, they bring them in ways, they sort of adapt them to the time they're living in such interesting ways. Like John Henry was a dude that the Klan tried to lynch, and then it didn't work. So he's like, oh, he basically turns into the Punisher at this point.
Yeah.
I love that.
And like you said, it really works with this time of seeing characters in a different time period, but they work so well. And how you can put them in these different elements and introduce them, or reintroduce them in ways that are so fascinating, and you're not tweaking these characters to where they're recognizable or anything. You're just like expanding on their purpose and and what they represent, and you're putting them, like I said, in these different eras that make sense. So and still you are acknowledging the racial issues, acknowledging the political, upheavals and everything like that in war, um, in such a way that's entertaining, that it is a comic book and it is supposed to be an escape from this kind of stuff. But like I said, you're being aware of it, and it's still telling, it's lessons learned, even for the characters as well.
Exactly. So then we cut to some more time, and we're seeing like, first off, we're seeing people watching the original Max Fleischer Superman cartoons. So there is that. And they're seeing the challenges of the unknown, which is again a group that like fights aliens and stuff, and like fights monsters. And what we're also seeing, and what John Jones is seeing more importantly, is how, like, honestly, the analogy, how xenophobic people are, because it's like they're very afraid of aliens and stuff, and the unknown, if you will. Even though, it's kind of funny. I wonder if they keep the whole Superman as an alien from another planet under wraps. And I mean the government, because when you imagine that, well, the other way I think about it is that, yes, Superman's an alien, but he looks like us. So there kind of is that.
Yeah, that is one thing that kind of gets me too, is that it's so easy. I guess that's why I like New 52 and Golden Age better, because that sort of thing was addressed. And how just because he looks human, it's still the fact that they're going to treat him differently and want him to be like that government stooge or lapdog. But post crisis made it as, you know, Superman is easily accepted because not only does he look like a normal human, but he, basically do like mental gymnastics and jump over, so many hoops, jump through so many hoops to pass and to make life so much easier, and to where he doesn't understand his alien, that struggle, and he's spoon fed, especially by the Kents when they are still alive, and then he becomes codependent on Lois. So it's kind of
Exactly.
like that is how the character becomes so boring and stagnant, and you, in that complexity and those layers that he is supposed to have, you take that away. And
And that's why the new 52 and the Snyderverse got me into Superman finally, because I saw all the layers and all the stuff he has to deal with, and I could appreciate the overall character. Because once you understand like what he really goes through on a daily basis in his head, then you're like, oh wow. So it's like he does this stuff even though people secretly maybe mistrust him, or he doesn't feel like he fits in, so he's trying to do this so people accept him. Just like in the DC documentary addressed this, when the writer of Superman versus the KKK says that Superman basically wants to be the perfect citizen so no one will question his citizenship.
Yeah, and honestly, that no, boo. That
Well, yeah, but to a certain degree, I think that that is true, that like some immigrants like want to try to be the perfect American so no one will question them.
yeah, you don't want anyone to question you. Like that's just
Hmm.
that. But at the same time, it's kind of like screw you if you try to question me and who I am, as like I have every right to be here, or
Hell
you
yeah.
know, um just as much as you do.
Hmm.
Who are you to think that you are better or of me as a citizen or whatever. And so, yeah, I just don't like that concept at
Me
all.
neither.
That because it really does feel like Superman is used to say that if you aren't, glorifying America, if you don't accept America's flaws in a sense of you mentally kind of like
Ignore
morph
them.
it into, yeah, ignoring them and morph it into like that is supposed to be right when it's actually very, very wrong. And then, yeah, you're being judgmental of anyone who um accepts and acknowledges their heritage. Like how Byrne um said that,
Yeah.
yeah, said that Superman, like you're ungrateful and stuff
I
if
did some
you
research. He got in trouble because he legit said that about immigrants, that like they're ungrateful because yeah, they come to this country but they want to keep some part of their cultural heritage. And I'm like, you a-hole.
yeah, and it's kind of honestly it's like okay, as as an African American, I mean, I can't like take away my skin color,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
it's kind of like how are you trying to make this so easy and judge anyone because of yeah their skin or the way they talk or or the way that they do certain things um like how you communicate. Some people they don't shake hands, they bow.
Hmm.
You can't take that away from a culture because that is their culture, that is what they do. You have to honor that and
Hmm.
respect that, and if you can't, then you can move aside. you know
Exactly. Well, here's the
but
thing also, that one of the essential ideals of America is freedom of speech and expression. So that kind of goes with that. But
yeah,
actually, what's
you're
kind so moving on. So what's kind of cool about I love this scene because they show the aliens. They show how like dangerous they are, and John Jones just starts laughing because he's like, "Yeah, we're not that really that dangerous." But the funny part, his thing is like the problem with this comedy. He sees that alien invasion movie as a comedy. Is he goes, "I'm the only one who thinks it's funny." In other words, to your point, Brit, um it's like he's the only one who like sees like, yeah, we're not threats to you, we're like I came here as a friend, but everyone else sees it as like, oh my gosh, it's an alien invasion. And then he
yeah
comes
and these
home.
type
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and these type of stereotypes are even pushed within media today
Mhm.
in reality, is that you have these stereotypical portrayals of, of African Americans, of Asians, Indians in movies and TV shows. Even Yara.
Mhm.
Um she was a Brazilian stereotype. And so many Brazilians were so offended. And that's pretty much why her character has diminished, as fast as it did, as she did.
But arguably,
because
Tom King is not helping because he turns her into a curse, into someone that curses every other word.
that, and I think he tried to like do like blended um language,
Hmm.
and it was kind of like the way he used the term or the sentence was so wrong. And it's kind of like that is not how that works. You could have easily either Googled it, or you could have asked a someone that speaks fluent Portuguese or any or something like that. But for you to try as an American, as a Caucasian man at that, too, you offend these other cultures because you're not doing your research. And if you want to write in their, specific language, ask. And
Exactly, or Google it. It's not like we don't have Google available. But anyway,
right,
John goes home and he finds Batman, and then it's kind of funny. I love how like John goes, "How'd you find me?" And he doesn't say this, but if I were Batman, I would say, "I'm Batman." That's all you have to say. And with but Batman essentially goes, "Hey, you're tracking the cult. I'm tracking the cult. I think we should work together." And what's kind of funny is Batman basically goes, "Hey, listen, we're gonna work together. It's not a question. We're working together." And he goes, "I've been watching you, Mr. Jones. I know all about you, except where you come from. My instincts tell me you are to be trusted, but make no mistake." Here's my favorite Batman line in this book. You ready? "It took a $70,000 sliver of meteor to stop Metropolis. With you, all I need is a penny for a book of matches." Batman's like, "You're the easiest to take out because all I need is a match. That's it. You're afraid of fire. I can stop you easily." So Batman's like, help me or I'll light you on fire."
and what is so funny, it's not funny, but it's so funny that Batman is so paranoid, and he straight up like is honest that he will he has such distrust
Mm-hmm.
with metahumans or aliens, but he wants to work with them, but that just shows how it's such a weird relationship
Well, not only
of
that,
Batman.
yeah, well, not only that, here's the interesting part. We all know Batman wouldn't actually light him on fire, but John Jones doesn't know that.
Right, and I mean, it really just speaks so much of Batman's fear and paranoia, though,
Mhm.
is that he still has to have, like, he tries to put fear into, you know, the aliens and metahumans, so he can feel a little bit dominant and secure, that to let them know that he knows their weakness, you know.
Exactly. He's like, "Don't step out of line." But anyway, so then we cut to the White House, and hang on, and where's the mouse? Okay, here we go. And Wonder Woman is being honored for her service and the medal. Now, here's the thing. So basically, the president eventually, well, first off, she's pushed off the. She's wants to give a speech about like, "I'm here to help," and then she starts to say, "My time in Vietnam has opened my eyes to the futility of," and before she can finish that statement, Richard next and shoos her off the stage. And he goes, "Okay, nothing. There's going to be refreshments in the other room." And then when she's in there, basically Wonder Woman says, "Hey, there's so much more I want to do. I want to help you." And he goes, the president basically says, "We don't need you anymore." It's essentially like, "We were only using you for this purpose to win this war or for propaganda. You've served that purpose. So we're done. Go back to your island." And I'm like, yeah, I get where he's coming from, but it's also like, yeah, the point is, it's like this is the way like a lot of leaders treat you, is that once you're no
Mhm.
longer of use, they toss you aside.
Exactly. That is exactly what is being done in reality. You have even celebrities do it all the time when they have like those um, like those photo ops or whatever. And even I didn't even know that paparazzis, they are called like maybe by the celebrity themselves to get caught and photoed.
Mhm.
So that is basically what the government or, the president or whatever is doing with Wonder Woman, is that you want to, because the public obviously loves her, trusts her, and to have her be honored and photoed with the president, you would think that, okay, this is how you get the public vote, you know. And that is what they do in reality. They do these certain things, these certain photo ops, these certain say all the right things, even just to get the people's vote. But
Exactly. I'm like, look this way. Either way, if you really think well, actually, you know what? I'm not gonna like go full on political, even though I can on this. But okay, because trust me, I could tell you some doozy stuff. But anyway, the point is that he basically tells Diana, okay, you're no longer. He basically says you're no longer a superhero, so go away. Cut to Carol Ferris bringing Hal Jordan to Ferris Air. He thought it was like, so they told him they're going to space. And what's kind of funny is he goes, okay, if I'm going to space, why am I going underground? This seems counterintuitive. And then she goes, oh yeah, here's the real Ferris Air. And this is this massive like silo hangar. And then I love all this because this is all like this is all like established in the space age. And this is really cool because in the history of Hal Jordan as the character, this is why they sort of modernize him and Barry, because because they looked at these characters and they were like, okay, so here's how we can make them science. Because remember, at this point in America in like the 60s, we're in the jet age and the nuclear age. So this is also where you get like the Hulk and Spider-Man having like very science origins and stuff. So it's part of what saved comic books from irrelevancy, because let me put it this way. Jay Garrick's original origin is he got his powers by inhaling the fumes of hard water. So, which it works for that character. Alan Scott's a magic guy, but at this point in American history, the kids are like more into science. So they're like, okay, so let's like make these characters more scientific. Hence Hal Jordan being a test pilot. And plus,
Yeah.
let me put this way: what kid does not want the exciting life of flying airplanes all day?
Right.
So then he meets Faraday, who's an agent for the government, and he says, "Here's the real reason why you're here, Mr. Jordan. Aliens exist, and they're on Mars. So we're gonna send like a response to Mars, because he says." So remember when in the beginning of the story where Jean first came to Earth? Apparently, the government arrived there and saw like all these footprints everywhere. So they're like, okay, so we know there's an alien among us. So we're gonna go to Mars because in the event that they end up being hostile, we're gonna need a plan and like a first strike capability. So he goes. So essentially, they tell Hal, yeah, you're essentially, think about it this way: you're kind of going to Mars on like a military mission, essentially. And he says, Hal, we're going to Mars, and then there's a spaceship, and then we see like we see John Jones. He's doing investigating into a book that's basically talking about this castaway from the Vikings. He landed on a dinosaur island again. So we're dealing more with the island known as the center. And then of course John Jones touches the book, and then he's linked to this creature, and he goes, "It's already here." And they kind of expanded this in the movie a little bit. And yeah, we will be talking about later in this episode about the movie, because there is some important stuff about the movie, because actually, short of a few like changes in dialogue, which annoyed the crap out of me and Brit, it's pretty much a solid adaptation.
Yeah.
But of course, it's regular DC. Then we see Gorilla Grodd, and Flash fights Gorilla Grodd, but that is like shot by the government with a containment net. And then he goes, "Wait a second, I'm trying to help you. Why are you shooting me?" And then he goes, "Hey, listen, dude. Because the government is trying to capture anyone that has powers to learn what makes them tick. Another thing the government would totally do." and then Barry so what the Flash can do is he can vibrate his molecules in such a way that he becomes intangible, and he can like move through walls and stuff. It's how he does in the show and in the comics and such. Then we meet.
That's honestly pretty cool.
Yeah, it is real. Flash has got a lot of really, really, really cool powers that he can do. In fact, the reason why he traveled, the multiverse was first discovered in the Flash books is because he vibrated his molecules so like fast. So the way that the multiverse works in DC is that the Earths all occupy the same physical space. It's just the way it works is they're all vibrating at a different frequency. So we don't see the other Earths, but they exist in the same space. What Flash did is he vibrated at the same like frequency as Earth 2. So he like popped into Earth 2, and then when he figured out how to get back, he vibrated at the same frequency as Earth 1. So I kind of like how that way of doing the multiverse, as opposed to like these Earths being like next to each other. It kind of
that doesn't make any sense for the Earth to be next to each other.
Yeah, I know. And then we again, it's just more like more stuff in the world, and then we find Jean Jones is brought into an interrogation room where he meets a scientist that basically escaped from that government facility, and he's like, "Look, there are aliens there, and they're going to Mars. They're going to bring bombs." And Jean's like, "Go on." Because at this point, Jean decides that he wants to go back to Mars, and he's like, if they have a ship that can go to Mars, I can go home. So then we cut to a simulation. Hal Jordan is like going through like astronaut training, and he kind of fails the simulator, and he gets reamed out. Now over here, John Henry Iron running from the Klan. He essentially finds a little girl and says basically, please help me. And then she basically said, and then the girl basically turns him over to the Klan. I'm going to speed through the panel because it basically has a word that I prefer not to have on Comics League. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of have to do that there. And then so we see, obituary for John Henry Irons, and it's actually basically the Punisher story. His family was killed, so he had to go punish those who killed him. And then it's a thing on TV. And then we see then we cut to Themyscira. And first off, this is one of my favorite images because Diana just looks so beautiful, so ethereal. And I like how they're like saying, "Hey, princess, you should come and join us in the water." And then Diana goes, "Perhaps if you would actually read a little more books, maybe you'd win a tournament." I love how snarky Diana is in this universe. Yeah. And second off, I love the way she looks in the toga. I think it looks really, really, really beautiful.
Yeah, she should definitely wear a toga more often. Like, I think Perez and really that's it, really had Diana wear more like Grecian style clothing. Maybe Phil did within his run. And as she was the ambassador type role. But yeah, this kind of Diana, she just feels more relaxed and confident, and again really showing of her culture. And we need to see and more of the sandals too.
Yeah, I love that. It looks very, very cool. And then I like how they do the whole look up in the sky. It's a man. And then I like how Clark just shows up. You know what's kind of funny? I love how I like this the rule that technically no man can step foot on Themyscira, and I'm like, technically he's not stepping foot on the island.
Yeah, he can fly. He can basically be levitating, but also it's the fact that he knows where the island is that's kind of interesting that he knew where the island was, because I'm sure she told him. Yeah, and maybe he has been there before. But also, I have an idea.
Oh, you have an idea now.
Yeah.
Oh boy, now I have to live in terror now for the rest of the stream. Oh no! So they have this question, and I like Diana tells them they kicked me out, and then Clark goes, "Why would they do that? You're a champion of the people." He goes, "Open your eyes, Clark. They don't care." And he goes, "Listen, Clark. Here's the thing. With all your power, you're missing this vital thing. People do see." And then she says, "Cal, your real power lies not in your strength, but in your values and compassionate spirit. That's what America needs right now. Not another administration. It needs a leader." She's basically saying, "You are the leader of the superheroes. Act like it."
Yes, I
And
loved this
yeah,
speech
yeah,
because
me too.
she understood what the world as a whole, not just the superhero community, but the world as a whole needs because he, you know, he doesn't belong completely, but the fact that the world as mortals, they do accept him though, and trust him. And then you have the superhero community who look up to him. So he can bring it all together. And of course, that was the theme of Kingdom Come too. And ironically, Diana also pretty much gave the same speech. So, in every time Clark needs to man up, Diana is always the one to give him this kind of "you need to be the leader that we need," speech.
Yeah, exactly. And I also love about this that Diana still believes in America, in the ideals of America, because she says, our America is an ideal, not an administration." So it's basically saying that, like, yeah, the ideals of the country are great. It's just oftentimes they're executed by really crappy people. So
And twisted.
and twisted. Yeah, I see. Again, this is the real form of patriotism that people misinterpret. Patriotism is not like blindly loving your country. It's accepting the flaws of your country and working to improve them. Because
Hmm.
that's our job as citizens. And okay, I'll step off my soapbox. Continuing on.
No, stay on it, because that is exactly what needs to be said.
Mhm.
Is that you know just the world is imperfect. Of course, nothing is. It's not a utopia, and I mean, if you think it is, then that's you, whatever. But nothing is perfect. And if we basically what Superman's story is, he is supposed to, you know, again, don't make Krypton like this desolate, heartless planet. It wasn't that. It was just some people, like the American government. Krypton had leaders that were very ignorant, that, did not listen, and it destroyed the planet.
Mhm.
So Clark's mission, a purpose, is basically to go to a certain planet. It could have been Earth, yeah, sure. For story purposes, it's Earth. It could have been it could have been Pluto, or something like that. But he is supposed to go to a different, planet, and basically keep Krypton, the
Mm.
more positive of Krypton, alive, but also, help these other planets be better so they won't, self-destruct like Krypton did.
You
But
just gave me an
then,
idea.
of course, oh my God, we're just gonna keep going back and forth.
Just when you
Um,
see, here's the thing. The way I operate is that just when you think you're in the clear, that's when I strike.
exactly, and then I'd be boohooing, but but they've reduced Superman to not be a hero of the planet, but he's just America. And now it's reducing to just Metropolis, one city. And it's ridiculous. It's like, why do you keep limiting this character that's supposed to be such a larger than life character,
Well,
and his
not only that,
purpose?
a city that's protected by not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but it's like 6 Kryptonians.
Right. So
That doesn't work.
Yes, but this story, again, a lot of the Elseworlds that we've gone over, and not only exemplifies the importance that Superman is supposed to be a global hero, but also shows again how Diana, their relationship, again, it can be full on romantic or it can be just them as friends. Like this. This is very much them as friends with benefits, basically. And they, especially Diana, she is the voice of reason. She is Clark's inspiration to, be the leader, be the man that he is supposed to be.
Exactly. So continuing on, then we meet so this was what the movie started out with. It's this children's book writer, essentially like
Dr.
Dr.
Seuss.
Seuss like character. Yeah, exactly. And he draws a book about the center, and then he shoots himself. Continuing on, John Jones is
Oh
watching.
wow, that is dark. I did not know. Wait a minute.
That's what the bang is, and then he reaches for the gun, and then bang.
That is so dark. Like you have the thing is, it's like these cameos or like these Easter eggs of children cartoons, like with Bugs Bunny, with the Fletcher Superman, now with Dr. Seuss. And it's so dark of him unaliving himself. It's like, well, I did not really take heed. Every time we review these books and you really, talk about the details, it's kind of like, oh, I did not pay attention to that to understand it. But now I understand it. And it's such a dark, like, tale here. But it's covered by like the humorous and childish aspect of, oh, this is a Dr. Seuss Easter egg, but
Exactly.
he,
Kind of goes in a
unalived
different
himself.
direction. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So then Jean Jones is watching TV again, and then Flash actually pops on the TV, and then he basically says, "Hey, listen, guys, I my entire time as a superhero, I've only tried to help people, but the problem is like everyone always sees me as a threat. So honestly, I'm done being a superhero." And then Jean sees this, and he's like, "They'll never accept me." So he decides he essentially meets Batman and says, "Nah, I'm gonna leave." And honestly, again, this is like really, really, really cool the way they do this, because it's kind of like that whole speech in Justice League 12 where Wonder Woman's like, "We're not like the gods, but we're not like them. We really have no place. They don't accept us." And it was kind of what I liked about the movie is that it added in the whole idea about how people think he's a communist because he wears a red costume.
Yeah.
So they're kind of superstitious. But yeah, again, this book is basically dealing with the concept of not being accepted by society. In the case of John Henry, for historical reasons and for like stupid reasons. For in this case, still stupid reasons. The point is like this book definitely deals with otherism in a way akin to X-Men when you think about it.
Right.
And then so Hal Jordan and Flag and a third person are now going. This is the space mission, so they're taking off. They're going to Mars, and then Jean tries to stow away on the ship, but then he's like caught by Faraday, and Jean actually saves him. And this will come back later when Faraday asks him, "Why did you save me?" Jean says, "Listen, because I knew there was good in you, even if you don't." And I'm like, geez, it's such pathos. It's like they still, no matter what, these characters don't give up on humanity. No matter what you do, they're like, no, to quote Batman at the end of BVS, men are still good. He means all of mankind. I thought I should clarify that.
Right.
And it's the whole thing about what these characters are supposed to instill. It's hope. That's why we believe in these superheroes. That's why it's like we believe these characters that are fake, yes, but can like fly and do all these other fantastical things. So then we find out that, big surprise, you know what the government had done? They hid bombs on the plane, on the jet, in case like in case it ever turned out to be, in case the Martians turn out to be hostile. And so what happens is the plane is gonna like explode. So they they go call in the big guy, and Superman is fighting a giant robot. No context, he's just fighting a robot. And then they're like, "Okay, dude, we kind of need you to come and help us because we're going to because the ship is gonna explode, and just go save the crew." Superman shows up, and he does that. I love the image of the ship burning up in the atmosphere. And so what we see here is that Flag and his co-pilot were in love, but they never really got together. And that's what this is showing. As Flag is dying, he's seeing the life they could have had. And I'm like, dang it. And then they both detonate the bomb together and die together. I'm like, that is so
so sad. That is
I know.
so bittersweet.
Yeah, it is. And then obviously Superman saves him. Now my thing is, Clark, I think you should put out the fire that's on the bodies right now. Dude, they're burning up, you dude. But I'm sure he's like, okay, if I get them low enough, they won't blow up. And then so one day, Hal's hanging out in the simulator. Then he's picked up by a green object. And he shows up here. The ring brought him to... Okay, so the story of Hal Jordan is that this man named Abin Sur, he was the original Green Lantern of the space sector that inhabits Earth. He was the greatest Green Lantern, as a matter of fact. And he showed up, he goes, listen, I'm dying. You need to take the ring and become the Green Lantern of this sector. And that's what happens. And Hal is now able... And I like how he's like learning how to fly and all that. And I like the like green like chute that's like coming off of him as he flies into space. And then he falls back into the ground. And then the way he buries the ship is he just drops a boulder on it. That's so Hal Jordan. He's like, no, I'm just going to bury it with like a couple of leaves. I'm done.
The coloring is so good with how the green light and Flash, showing the super speed, just any type of blurred motion type thing. The coloring is just so good.
It is remarkable how well this thing is. And then we learn information on the center. So essentially, it's an alien being that came to Earth and essentially wants to take over. But the idea now of the center is it's going to destroy Earth and then move on because we're not worth it. And then we see how Batman's changed. He took on Dick Grayson Robin and got a less threatening suit. Because here's the thing. Clark asks him, so what inspired this? Bruce says, because I scared the wrong people. Because Batman's Batman because he wants to scare the criminals, but he ended up scaring the person he's trying to save. And he's like, no, that's not my job. And it's kind of nice because you also see, and they kind of hint at this in the regular Batman comics, that having a Robin kind of like softens Batman because essentially he's able to I think kind of being able to be a father figure to Dick Grayson kind of softens Bruce. And what's kind of interesting, in a comic that I read once, Batman was like having a crisis of faith. And he goes, Alfred, I don't know if I'm really having a positive effect on Gotham. And then Alfred says, hey, listen, Master Bruce, if you ever want to see if you're the effect that you have on people, look at Master Grayson, because by all intents and purposes, he went through the same thing you did. He should be a dark and dreadful person. He should be. He essentially says he should be messed up, but because of you, take him under his tutelage, showing him love, showing him support, he's thriving.
I think that it's basically like, of course, older Bruce seeing Grayson as a younger Bruce, and he wants to care for him.
Exactly.
So it's still kind of like a psychological thing with him, but he's healing. Well,
Mhm.
he doesn't. Of course, he doesn't heal.
He can't
Completely
completely
or
heal, but it's more like he's finding ways to fill the gaps in his life. And
right.
even with Damien, he takes Damien on his wing because he's like, no, I'm gonna actually be a father now. So I'm gonna try and do for me what I wish my
Yeah.
parents were able to. I'm gonna do for Damien what I wish my parents were able to do for me. So it's really cool to see like Batman have all these things that like softens him.
Yeah.
And then Themyscira is attacked by, we don't know what it is, but it's the center. Can I say, I love Wonder Woman's crown with the wings.
Yeah. It. If anyone else tried to draw this, it probably would look a little weird. But again, Cook's art for this for Diana's entire design works perfectly just with his art alone.
Exactly. And then it's because, again, he draws everything so idealistically and beautiful. And that's why he is like one of the legends of DC. And then John Jones is playing chess with Faraday, and they're having a very nice conversation, but they're still talking about like, I guess he's saying that like I'm not like essentially Jean is trying to warn them about the center being here. Cut to the challenges of the unknown showing up at a nuclear facility, and they're almost eaten by a giant pterodactyl. And they can't launch a missile at it because it's with some nuclear reactors. So who do they call? Clark Kent. And he shows up and he uses like a rope to like tie the thing down to the ocean. Well, speaking of ocean, a good old friend named Arthur Curry shows up, and then I love the of Arthur like directing the sea life. Again, to your point, the coloring, just the way the seafoam green like accent on everything and the shadows of the fish.
Yes. And the
And
shadow of Arthur.
yeah, exactly. The To that point, the shadows of this book are like, it's essentially like it's like watching a cartoon, but it's essentially a static cartoon. And then here at Cape Canaveral, the so they're essentially still tying down the monster, and then Diana shows up, and I love how she's in the invisible jet. But to our point, Brit, about drawing the invisible jet from last week, we see that like her blood is like showing you that she's actually in the jet and stuff. It's covering the cockpit. If this much blood, this is how I know she's like a superhero, because if that much blood left her, I'm pretty sure she'd be dead.
Right.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, okay. And she goes, I haven't flown this thing in years. I'm a little rusty. So then they show up, and you find out the center is a giant ass island with like these big like cannons and lasers coming out of it, and like all these creatures coming out of it. And then Barry's watching TV, and he goes, "Oh man, Iris, where'd you? There's something I want to tell you." He's going to tell you the Flash, and then Iris says, "Oh no, I know you're the Flash. I'm a journalist, Bear. I'm an investigative reporter. You really think I wouldn't be able to figure it out that you're the Flash?"
That is such a that's such shade to Lois.
I know, right? You know what's kind of funny? I just noticed that is a big F you to Lois. Oh man. Because she's supposed, this is one of my problems with Lois. She's supposed to be the DC markets her as like the greatest investigative journalist in DC. She couldn't figure out Superman is Clark.
So what the headcanon is that, Lois fans, they would say that, oh, she already knows, but she's waiting for Clark to tell her, when he's ready, whatever. But it's never written like that. It's
Mm-mm.
always written that he tells her and she's surprised, whatever. Then, of course, they try to romanticize it and make it seem like, oh, or the fact of how she is written to care for Clark, now that she didn't. And Superman, she barely cares, or she equally cares for both. But yeah, you have to continue to, revisionist history and retcon things for Lois to work, or you have a whole bunch of plot holes, or you can poke holes in the contrivances and everything like that.
Exactly. And then we cut to essentially there's he goes to John Jones and he goes, "Hey man, why don't you come and help us with this creature? Because I get the feeling you're going to be helpful." So John goes, "Okay, so the last time I showed up like an alien, I gave someone a heart attack and they died. How about I become a little more like presentable?" So he turns into the traditional Martian Manhunter look, which is not bad. And then you see all the Golden Age superheroes are like rallying up, and you even see like Green Arrow and Speedy. We see the Sea Devils. We see the Blackhawks, and the Blackhawks are basically a group of Golden Age era fighter pilots made up of like all the pilots who were from like occupied countries. So that's essentially what they were. And then Hal's like, "Okay, I gotta go fight. I have to go fight." And this is where he says, "Okay, everyone's asking me why I didn't take a life in the Korean War. It's because I didn't think I didn't think it was a good enough reason. I didn't think what we were doing in the Korea was worth killing over. But in that trench, I learned what would make me kill. I would kill if I had to in order to survive. And this is one of those occasions where if I don't do this, we're all gonna die." And the fun part is the sweet part is that Carol goes, "Aren't you gonna at least say goodbye?" And then he kisses her in front of the turbine, and then her
And it's
hat just
so
flies
sweet.
off. And I'm like, yeah, because as far as he knows, it's the last time he's ever gonna see her. And then he puts on the helmet that says like highball, and then he says, "I love you, Carol." She doesn't hear him because of the jet wash, but still, it's like, you better tell her when you get back, dude. And then we see like the center decimated Themyscira. And before Diana faints, she tells him, "You have to be the leader now. Now is the time, Cal." And then she kisses him, and then gets knocked out. But still, I'm like, this is one of the parts that annoyed me about the animated movie. We'll talk about that in a second because we're almost done with the book, where
But they also,
they gave all of her lines to Lois as well. I know you're getting to that, but we'll get there. So then we have the government are like fighting with the superheroes because no one trusts each other. And then Clark's like, "Okay," he does the clap. He goes, "Do I have your attention? Good. Stop fighting. We're all going to die if we don't team up. So how about we actually work together on this? Because otherwise we're all going to die. No matter what. If we don't do something together, everyone dies. It's not just one group that dies. No, everyone does. So let's go stop this thing no matter what, and let's do this. Who's with me?" And then everyone says yes. And again, it's the thing about Superman. He's the unifying force of the DC. Really, when you think about it, he is the heart of the DC universe. And he
right.
flies to go fight the center and gets knocked out and is out for the rest of the book.
I love that they that Cook changed the "There's the door, spaceman," that quote
Yeah.
to to be more sentimental, and Diana calling him spaceman is like a thing that is not just he is a spaceman, and
Mm-hmm.
so it becomes kind of like how in the in JSA movie for Tomorrowverse, how she calls him Shakespeare. I
Mm-hmm.
really hope she calls him Shakespeare again in
Oh,
part 3.
please. Like
But
maybe when she's teleported back to the essentially fortress for the Monitor, and they see each other for the again. Because my theory is that so dealing with like this basic void, I don't think any of the worlds are getting actually destroyed. I think they're just being transported to that world. That's my
yeah,
theory for that.
that totally makes sense. But yeah, Spaceman Shakespeare is very unique, and I like those names. And also the fact is his speech. He says that his best friend is up there, fighting for her life. And it also reminisces to Perez when Diana quote unquote died in that time. how Clark gave a speech, that they needed to fight in a war and in honor of Diana. So yeah, again, it's the consistency of Diana always being like this inspiration for Cal to be Superman and to be that leader and to, you know, his speeches to just vocalize who he is and how to bring people together.
Yeah, and it's like even what he says, he's like, my best friend is lying upstairs right now. She would have given her last breath this country, and she may yet. I couldn't look her in the eye. And then he says, I'm no longer going to be party to any form of persecution. This has to stop right now, because otherwise we're all going to die. And again, I love the way he does that. And then he gets knocked out. And I love the contrast because he's like, are you with me? And everyone cheers, yay! And then he goes and fights and gets knocked out, and everyone's like, oh no. And then we cut to the moon where all the magic people are talking, and they're basically like, we're not going to get involved. Again, this is why I like Darwyn's writing. He did this scene just because everyone's going to ask, where's the Spectre? Where's Dr. Fate? Where are all these magic people? Oh yeah, they decided not to get involved. All right, so then we have Lois Lane. She's talking about Superman getting knocked down. She can't do it. She can't complete it. And then we have Adam Strange breaks out of Arkham Asylum to go fight. Hal Jordan shows up and he goes, nope, okay, it's my job. Actually, what happened is that his aircraft ran out of fuel, so he just crashed. But then he's like, hey, this ring can possibly power this. So he uses the power battery that he has to power up, and he goes, oh man, I love this ring. And he shows, and then they get Ray Palmer, the Atom, and then as the superheroes form a plan, the idea is that Ray Palmer has this shrinking device. Now the thing about it is that it's still experimental, and it makes things very unstable. In other words, exploding unstable. So the idea is the Flash is gonna strap this thing to his back like a backpack, run along the entire length of the center, and shrink it to the point where it explodes. At the same time, all of the flying people are going to keep this thing is going to keep all the monsters off the Flash's back, and then everyone lines up. And I love this image, and I'm so happy it was recreated in the movie, because this is like one of the iconic moments of the story, and it's like humanity's last stand, and you see everyone is united, no one's divided.
Yeah,
And
it really.
I just love how it
This
does
is
that.
the focal point of the story.
Yeah, and even in the movie, it's the whole thing about how, hey, look, everyone here is here for one purpose. Today, there's no Democrats, no Republicans, no hawks nor doves, just people united in the idea that we're fighting for humanity's survival. And I'm like, this is what the heroes do. They're supposed to bring us together. Unfortunately, if the internet existed, they would bring us even more apart. So there you go.
True.
Yeah, tell me I'm not sure. So the planes take off, and then obviously it's tough fighting. And then I love this where Jimmy is he's taking photos and documenting it, and then Diana shows up and it's like whacking it with steel, whacking a T-Rex with steel. And I love, again, it's like still she's like rallying all the troops, and she goes, no, we have to keep fighting. And then we see Jean is being mentally messed up by the center, and Faraday essentially kills himself. He essentially mind melds with Jean, and it's the idea that he wants to. It was to snap him out of it, and then Jean's like, he sacrificed himself for me. Imagine that. And then Jean goes crazy and just flies through a bunch of T-Rexes. Never ever piss off a Martian. And then Hal and his squadron go into the actual island, and I like how trippy everything gets when they're in there, and they actually recreate this on the movie. Speaking of colors, everything's all zany, and then the ships start to break apart, and Hal's like, oh no, I'm gonna die. This is the end. And then the ring activates, and he goes, "Okay, no, I got this." And then he said, first off, the idea is that they were going to fly in and detonate bombs inside, and one of them does, but essentially the like hatches that open up so they can drop the bombs were jammed closed. So obviously, either they manually detonate and kill themselves, or nothing happens. So Hal
This is a
gets
dun
out of
dun
his
dun
jet.
moment.
Yeah, it's a very like, oh no. So Hal saves whoever he can, and then they get out, and then Flash starts his run. And can I say, I love Wonder Woman's flying pose. It's like she's a goddess.
Yeah.
And then Barry does his thing. Again, I love the image of Flash using a wave as a ramp to jump on the creature. And he's like, oh, whoop, Fast and the Furious. And then he just runs. And then he covers the entire creature. And then Flash falls in the ocean as Wonder Woman dives in and saves him. And then Hal's plan is the thing is moving toward mainland, is going to explode, but he's going to use his ring to like contain it. And then I basically love where the center goes, you don't have the concentration to like fight me, to like win. And then Hal goes, watch me. And then he like throws the thing into deep space, and then it explodes, winning the day. And then Arthur shows up, and I love long-haired Arthur. Thank you, Jason Momoa, for popularizing that. And then says, this man has been calling for Lois. And I'm like, no, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. He's clearly been calling for Diana. He's not calling for whoever the hell that annoying journalist is. Move on. Move on. Wave off. Wave off.
Honestly,
yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, the ending part of trying to make it seem like Superman and Lois was in love or something, it just seems so like
Forced.
last minute editorial change or something, because it's kind of like throughout this whole story they have they haven't interacted like that in a sense. So
Actually, in the book,
it's
they
like,
haven't interacted at all.
right, so it's kind of like how all of a sudden at the end you have that. It just came out of nowhere. It is so weird, and especially he kissed Diana. So
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
know. Yeah, kissed him. I think was it twice? No, it was once. And then
it was once, but it's still the fact of like their relationship is very much a Diana calling him my Cal, or she's,
Spaceman and all that.
yeah, is very much, even if he did call her best friend, it's still the fact that they obviously have a deeper relationship. So yeah, for that ending of him supposedly calling for Lois or whatever, it just seemed weird.
Mm-hmm. And then we get a scene that was so faithfully and lovingly recreated in the animated movie, where it's JFK's inauguration speech. And it's basically talking about we're at a new frontier and a new world. And then we see the world slowly improving with the presence of the superheroes. And we even have like the supervillains emerge. We have John Henry inspiring John Henry Irons now. Actually, so the guy that was killed, that was John Henry Irons' father, named John Henry. This is going to be Steel. So it's kind of cool seeing one generation inspire the other. And let me tell you, so watching the animated movie and hearing the Kennedy words in association with the images of this book, that was one of the few times where I got choked up watching an animated movie. And
It looks so good. That is such
can we get this
an
as a poster
amazing.
for a Justice League movie, please?
Yeah, I don't know. With James Gunn, he he did say, or it was implied or something, that New Frontier is like um the Justice League book to read. He hasn't said any other Justice League book yet, but this one was, you know, So I don't know if his Justice League um, movie will be based off of this story.
He kind of
I mean,
can't,
it's
because part of what makes the story good is the fact that it takes place in the 60s.
true, but yeah,
Hmm.
well, it's pretty much the same thing as what he's doing. It seemed like they're putting elements of like every DC era or something, trying to put it in one. So even if it is not, you know, in the era that this, I guess he will take the just the plot itself,
Yeah,
or you know,
probably the enemy will be the center.
yeah, and the themes of it. But other than that, I really don't know um about that. If this is their, you know, first story for the Justice League, I don't know yet.
We'll certainly see. And then we get, and again, at this point with the store, when I was watching the animated movie, okay, so Britt, you know those crying cat gifts that you always send me whenever I give you ideas? That was me.
Yeah.
That was me. Because the words of JFK, all the idealism followed by his heroic images, and I'm like, and then we get this. So Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen are at this spot in the ocean where sorrow emerges, and then and then they recreate the image of the very first Justice League cover, where it's them versus Sorrow, and I'm like, yeah, well done, sir. And then that's the end of the main story, and then we're gonna skip to. We went through 399 pages. Jeez. Then we're going to get to the special that we're going to talk about, the JLA Classified special, which is a little one shot that has a bunch of other stuff. Well, like it talks about like more about the idealism and like a lot of they're essentially little side stories.
Right.
Like we get to see, yeah, essentially a lot of what made Batman surrender. And then you want to tell us about this particular story, Britt?
Yeah, you basically see the first Trinity meeting, and also the a little bit more in depth of how you said earlier of Superman and Batman's fight,
Mm-hmm.
and to understand why they were fighting, and you know, and their of course secret identities revealed and everything like that. So yeah, it's good to have that type of backstory of that they essentially were enemies, they turned to friends, you know, and the reason why, um like I said, they had to fight. And I love that it's from Diana's perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yes. By the way, speaking of looking good in a toga, again, I love this, and I love her tiara too. Again, she has all these different tiaras, but each one is like, actually, you know what this probably is? Oh, wait, actually, no, I thought that was Hippolyta, but it's probably not, because it's calling her, yes, princess. She would say yes, daughter. So, but still, again, the image of Diana in the toga, that it should do that a lot more. It looks good. Then we see Clark at Mount Rushmore, and again, he's talking shit to the president. This is like, it's basically, we're seeing the origins of like Clark's real idealism about American stuff. That's like the main point of this book. Then we see like Batman meeting Catwoman for the first time. And then eventually they start fighting, and it turns into Batman versus Superman, where like Batman rolls up and he's shooting rockets at Superman, even though I can't believe you thought that would work. And the idea is that Batman's a rebel against the status quo, so they send Superman to fight him. This sounds like almost like it'd be written by by Frank Miller and become a major Batman story. Who knew? And yeah, you were gonna say something, Britt?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that yeah, it this story I like a little bit better because again, it's from Diana's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the fight and understanding that yeah, Batman is rebelling against the law. Superman, he's conflicted, and that's how he should be. He should be very much conflicted with the government and everything, and he's not just following as a lapdog. It's a reason why. And like I said, the only good reason is, if his back is up against a wall or something, if he's trying to get a little information of something, just that a little bit of trust here and there of, you know, even a little infiltration, kind of like, but he'll turn it around and, something like that. But just be blinded as a lapdog, no, I don't really agree with that. So this is a much better fight, and of the Batman rebel and Superman government stooge. I like, this is
Exactly.
much better than Frank Miller's kind of influence of why everyone's perception of Superman is so still bad.
Speaking of Frank Miller, isn't it kind of interesting how this part right here is very similar to Superman Year One, where Wonder Woman comes out of nowhere to stop them from fighting? She's
Yeah.
like, both of you are better. I love how basically what this always amounts to is Diana goes, do I have to be the adult here?
Yes, she does. Yes, she does.
She does, Ken. And she goes, Cal, when are you going to stop following orders and follow your heart? You know this is wrong. What are you doing? And again, this is paying off to the fact that, like we said before, the great part about Clark and Diana is that they can serve as each other's conscious,
Yeah,
the plural
and
of
moral
conscience.
Yeah.
Whatever that word is. I was a political scientist. Why is English so hard?
Yeah, because sometimes, the silent letters and all of that, you just, hey, if I understand what you're trying to say, so that's all that
Thank you.
matters.
That's the point. That's all I need. And then I love Diana going, hey, we're all friends. Do you really? She's like, essentially, don't you see the three of us are all that's left? They want us to turn against each other. Again, so the government's like, we turn the superheroes against each other and get them fighting. Then they won't be because obviously I'm sure the government's thinking if they're that the superheroes are trying to think about overthrowing the government. So they're like, let's get them infighting. Obviously they wouldn't do that. And then there you go. This is where you have Clark and Bruce finally having a friendship, Bruce revealing his identity, and he goes, I'll be damned, all that time on your ship. And then Bruce goes, yeah, no hard feelings. In his head, he's probably like, I could have taken you.
It's so funny how he's all bloodied and bruised.
Yeah, he's like, we're all good. We're all good. And then what they do is they stage a fight. They actually stage a fake battle so that Clark can say, yes, I did fight and beat Batman. He's gonna essentially he's going to fall in line. And that's why in the beginning and that's why when you first saw him in the main story, he was operating in the shadows, because he basically told Bruce, I'm not top. I'm saying just go into the shadows now so I can say, hey, he's not doing what I told him to do. I told him to stop. And so it's the idea of plausible deniability. And then we get a story of the teenage sidekicks of Robin and it's Wally West just stopping a heist and stopping bombs from going off. Then we have more about I like how this is basically one of those old commercials for DC Comics with Hal Jordan, John Henry, Martian Manhunter, the best in DC Comics. And then we have Wonder Woman hanging out with Black Canary. So you said that so based on this, all right, if I would say that this is probably okay. Well,
this
that's
is
odd.
natural blonde.
Yeah, because I was about to say, because the one earlier in the story had a brunette, unless the brunette was the wig. Interesting. I'm pretty sure. Hang on, I'm gonna Google that on my phone real quick. She originally wore a blonde wig to hide her black hair. In 2010, she let her blonde hair grow out and no longer wears her brown wig. Okay. So this is probably taking place after that, because she originally had the wig, but now she's essentially blonde. Okay, that explains it. And by the way, I like the art style of this, how it's more I guess it's Bombshell-esque.
Yeah.
And I like how they go into essentially, it's kind of like a strip club, but it's more like a burlesque club. And you can see Diana's
yeah, it's burlesque.
You can see Diana's like, oh my gosh. And if there's one person you don't want to piss off with misogyny, it's Wonder Woman. And even Black Canary, because that's not going to turn out well. And so they free all the girls and they fall out. And then I think that should be it. But all in all, pretty dope story. I rate this a solid, like, 10 out of 10 in terms of like the way the characters are presented, except for like the thing, I am Arthur. This one has been talking about Lois, who he's never talked about in the book before.
Right. That is so random.
Overall, pretty solid Justice League story, and really, again, it's one of those stories where SuperWonder is actually both represented, but also kind of dissed on in a way because of the whole Lois out of nowhere, but still, it's actually pretty dope. So let me go to the PowerPoint. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even with the special, it's still the fact of Diana calling him my cow. So it was
Mhm.
kind of weird again, and Lois is still not mentioned, only at the end. So it's kind of like it really feels like an editorial mandate thing. And even with it's kind of like it's still happening, um even present time with Tomorrowverse. Even, you know,
Oh yeah.
in the JSA movie, Lois did not exist. It was with Steve dying, and it's implied that Clark and Diana would, come together. Um, and then in Crisis, he Earth 2, Lois existed, you know, off screen the whole time, and she died off screen. So it was kind of like it was pointless to even mention her. Like, and for them to have a whole life, um, married and everything, it just seemed, again, out of nowhere, because you don't have that type of investment. Um, it's not a relationship that's really required within the movie. So it's like it just feels like a mandate to some have her mentioned somewhere, even though she really doesn't belong within the story. Um,
Well, again, Britt, we both know that DC is well known for doing stuff off screen. So,
yeah,
uh, and before you say anything, J Heat, I will never let that go. Continuing on. So
honestly, no, we can't let that go, because
it's bad
it
storytelling.
right.
So essentially, here's the intro to New Frontier. It's as we said before, it's a multi-award winning book. It was collected in a lot of trade paperbacks and absolute editions. I need to get the absolute edition because it's basically larger. And the world is basically, again, it's like it's essentially the superheroes in the more idealized time of America, like the New Frontier, if you will. And yeah, so that's essentially what that is. Now, I also collected this great scene, as we saw before, about again, Wonder Woman challenging Superman and serving as a check. And that's the really cool thing about this couple, is that they are a check on each other.
Yeah, and again, I love that Diana, she seems taller, like maybe a few centimeters taller, but it still works within Cook's art of her being a little dominant, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it shows the power that she has. But Clark is like, he's not intimidated or anything, and he still respects her opinions. He still respects her, you know, being, maybe she takes lead or being in command. But it's just something about still this conversation of that, we see this all the time on Twitter X, of not only talking about her height, but the conversation that, it should be with Clark and Diana as characters, individuals, and their partnership, of how they view, you know, decisions, and as heroes, whether it is kind of not the best decision, or it is in the long run, how it's going to, you know, have a positive effect.
Exactly. And so it's a funny thing. It's giving me real Xena the Warrior Princess vibes. And what's kind of funny, she was voiced by Xena the Warrior Princess in the animated
Right.
movie. And I was like,
Yes,
oh, well, that's appropriate. By the way, that's
very
actually
much
a
so.
pretty good show.
Yeah, it is.
So then we get to the movie. And again, the movie was pretty good. I will say this. Okay. Overall, the film was great. It's pretty much like page to screen. They even recreate the art style. The problem is when they give the dialogue of Clark and Diana to Lois. And I'm like,
And the thing
why?
is, it doesn't work at all with Lois because she doesn't understand the nature as a hero and the government of how they're treating heroes. So the it just seems so out of place and doesn't seem like what, Lois should. She just doesn't understand that nature of, you know, of what they're dealing with.
Well, the
But
other thing,
of course they have.
if you look at the dialogue that Lois is saying, it kind of points Diana at, it's kind of paints Diana as the ignorant immigrant because she goes, "Oh, she's an Amazon. She's trying to make sense of her convictions," and I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah,
Um, that's not right. That doesn't sit well with me.
it never does because it it's kind of like they try to change Clark and Diana's relationship to be in order for Lois to have um a role, it has to turn into something antagonistic or something with Clark and Diana, or is always the blame of something not being understood is Diana's fault. And it's kind of like, no, because in the book she understands clearly.
Not only
She
that,
actually goes through it.
you know what's kind of funny? Whenever anyone tells me that like, oh yeah, Lois really grounds Clark and stuff, and they show me dialogue like this, I really hope that someone shows me a scene from New Frontier once when I'm having a debate, because then I could say, they stole that dialogue actually from Diana. So what you're really telling me is Diana grounds Clark if we're going with this argument.
Right. And the only grounding that Lois does is when she calls him Smallville. And it's not even they try to make it seem like it's
Term of
a
endearment.
term of endearment, but what it really means is that she's belittling him as coming from a small town. So she
Exactly.
basically is calling him very much like ignorant and, just a simpleton. So calling him Smallville is not, a good thing. Um, and so like what we saw even with Tomasi when with trying to have them break up off screen and how Diana called the secret identity a facade. And it's kind of like, okay, one movie ago she was talking about how she loved the glasses. Now she's saying that it's a facade or whatever. You
Yeah.
know, and
Again.
so yeah, it's a lot of things that they have to do. And most of the time it's to make Clark and Diana antagonistic towards each other for like out of the blue. And it seems so contrived. And it is contrived. And just like it makes them unlikable in a sense. And maybe that's the purpose to make you not like their relationship. But yeah, I really did not like this. And especially because, again, Lois doesn't understand the ways of the heroes. She doesn't understand how they're being treated and, being used with the government, and how Diana has been Clark's sounding board. She's been his voice of reason. She's been his moral compass throughout this whole story. And then you bring in Lois out of the blue to say, certain lines that really, um, compliment Diana. And
Exactly.
there has,
Well, yeah, it also, again, insults Diana as the ignorant girl from an island.
yeah, she's just a foreign girl that's a goddess and she doesn't have humanity. Yeah, it's borderline racist, xenophobic, that whole thing that we continue to talk about. And also, I mean, I think I have yet to find it. I I don't think I want to, and maybe it's a good thing I haven't. Um, but the interview for Bruce Timm about like the line change or something,
Oh God.
um, it
Why
might
is
have
it
been
was kind
just
of funny. Every time Brit sends me stuff about Superman, I'm either delighted because it's SuperWonder stuff, or I'm utterly annoyed and outraged because there'll be something some creator has said or done that has hurt the image of Superman. I'm looking at you, John Byrne.
right. But they going based off the comment and
Mhm.
some people co-signing, it was, and even with the JLU, that series, animated series, the reason why Clark and Diana's like they are distant or certain lines change is because they, well, and it's obvious, they don't want anyone to ship them. And it's a protection thing of Lois. Like she is supposed to be the love interest, the one and only love interest for Superman. So yeah, they will make them distant to where they don't talk to each other or change certain lines, take out certain lines, take out these certain things in order for Lois to have a role, for her to, have the role that Diana should have, and just to make it seem like she is the only love interest, which again, that really does not make sense to me. If you are so secure with the Lois and Clark relationship, you wouldn't have to bend over backwards and doing all of that. You wouldn't
Exactly.
have
You wouldn't have to
to,
change stuff.
yeah, you wouldn't. And if you're in fear of someone shipping another couple, then you know that that ship works then. So it's not really it's not even a swipe or whatever against uh Super Wonder. Is actually very much in a twisted way a good thing to show that it's pretty much a threat
Thank you,
to,
DC. Well, it
you
is,
know,
particularly after the new 52 and it took off and sold so well. But speaking of
right.
selling so well, we also have this beautiful image of. Actually, you know what, Britt? Why don't you explain to the fine people at home this wonderful image of Superman and Wonder Woman?
Okay, so this is from the Graphic Ink uh collection for Darwin. It's more short stories here and there of his the world that he's built. And this is one panel where it's kind of like blink and you miss it, but it was I think it was a detective story, and they is based on like the characters meeting at Jimmy's, a bar,
Mhm.
and you see superheroes coming in and out, they drunk, or it's, you see the fights or having interviews or something like that at the bar. And this one is obviously Clark and Diana holding hands coming out the bar. And again, this emphasized that within this world, Clark and Diana are supposed to be best friends with obvious more than best friend type, implications, or they are together. So it still contradicts, it doesn't make sense why at the end of the story Lois is involved. Like, you know,
Yeah.
um,
Again, the kiss also is what really makes me think. I'm like, well, where did this come from? Speaking of the kiss, as a matter of fact, we also have this fantastic variant cover for Superman Wonder Woman right there. Where, and again, this is part of what Jim Lee said when he was talking about the couple. He goes, the cool thing about Superman and Wonder Woman is you can do stuff with them that you wouldn't be able to do with, like, Lois, for instance, like have them have a nice picnic on an alien planet.
yeah, if they want them to have a picnic on an alien planet, Lois will have to have on an astronaut suit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how romantic or whatever that, even with like Tom King, when Lois is in an astronaut suit and they're on the moon. It just seems kind of like so random. Like it doesn't look visually romantic at all.
Hmm.
Um, because it's you can't see her face. You just see like the back of them and Superman with an astronaut. It just, visually, honestly, Lois and Clark visually not appealing. Like it's so limiting,
So
especially when
basic.
you have to, yeah, especially when you have to have like the bridal pose of him carrying her. That's every single image of him carrying her is just so tired. Um,
Exactly.
Another thing is that Bruce Timm with the animated movie, they took out the
Oh,
kiss.
oh yeah, I noticed
And
that. I'm like, where?
I mean, the emotion, and honestly, probably didn't even want that much emotion. The emotion of when Diana crashed the jet and how she caressed his cheek with the blood or whatever, that gave still so much more like of them being close for that moment than stealing that the scene of stealing Diana's lines for Lois or the end of still calling for Lois. It just seems still Lois is out of place and it should be Diana.
As she
Um
normally is.
and Bruce Timm, what I did look up though when I was trying to look for the interview, those later interviews, but I think it was 2018
Hmm.
maybe. But he said that he wants to redo this uh story to
Mm.
make it like a two-parter or something because he said they took out so much and it's kind of like, no, I don't trust you because you took out so
Yeah.
much, but you would put back, even if he did put back the kiss in, he would probably give the kiss to Lois and just that
Here's the
whole
other thing.
space, man.
When Bruce Timm adds stuff to an animated movie, we get the killing joke, and that's not exactly a good thing.
Yeah, so I would much rather for him to, chill out and not, you know, um, attempt to redo this story. And I mean, WB doesn't have the budget for it anyway.
No, to do it
So,
well, they don't. No, it would look more like the Tomorrowverse.
yeah. And
Now,
back to this
yeah, go ahead.
variant cover. First is very much giving like the Adam and Eve with the apple and under the tree and the petals being of hearts. And it just shows how again Clark and Diana within this earth are obviously supposed to be a couple. It's just,
Hmm.
you know, even when Darwin did the variants for at that time, you know, even though it was still Clark and Diana together, he could have implied within the Action Comics cover or the Superman cover of Lois, and she was not there. So for you to have a obvious romantic, cover for Clark and Diana, and to know what that means and um, be within this universe, then yeah, I really believe that it was editorial that changed, the ending for it to be Lois. Just like Brian Hitch, his
Hmm.
a legacy story with Hunter, how you can tell the plot holes of Hunter's origin and how the ending really does not mix well with the story itself because of how he's supposed to how he's supposed to exist if he, meeting his parents and Clark and Diana seem all hugged up together. Yeah, just all of this editorial changes, but it's so inconsistent with whatever you're trying to force. And yeah, that is the problem DC has. Stop trying to force, the traditional pairings when they don't fit. It's a multiverse. Just let it be.
Exactly. Now, speaking of gods amongst men, Brit and I have another thing to discuss that's related to Superman, that's kind of related to superheroes. There's the show on Netflix called Blood of Zeus. And okay, I've been long said that I'm a DC fan because I was a fan of Greek myth. And let me tell you, so the concept of this show, they basically take the Greek gods and position them like superheroes. And this is stupendous as a series. I freaking love this thing. And we have 2 seasons of awesome with this.
That and even the very first episode when they're fighting and the
Yes.
scene of Zeus and Hera together, it was very much Superman and Wonder Woman-esque for sure.
And the colors of that scene are like, that's what I love about those flashback scenes, the way they do the colors and the way that the god's eyes glow. I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, just the whole visual of this of the animation here is just so good. And it's no like it's not staticky or anything. It's just so fluid. And it's just I love the designs. They are so unique and they are, they stand out. And I love the hair colors, of the gods. I love, just this certain distinction for them.
And I noticed. So if you look at the Athena design down here, if you look at her collar, it looks like she's fought Medusa, because if you remember, when Perseus defeated Medusa, he gave I believe he gave the head to Athena, and Athena, out of the snake things, made this little collar, if you will. So that's actually kind of cool how they're that attentive to detail in the gods.
I really, so if she already fought Medusa, that means we won't be able to see Medusa.
Maybe they could redo it. It's not necessarily like she probably won't show up.
I would love to see a Medusa design. Like that would be so, that is just you know, even if it is a flashback, I would love to see that fight.
Yeah, it would be kind of cool to see that. Now, again, so to echo what Britt said, the thing I really love about this is the way they designed the gods. And they said in the documentaries that the gods were designed to be like these beautiful people because they're like these perfect beings. I also really like about how the gods are taller than everyone else by like a lot, and it's like whenever Huron is talking to like the gods, he's like, "Oh yeah, so then I was walking down the street and this happened."
But but the thing is, even though they are like extra tall, it seems like they aren't really affected by it. Like they
Mm-mm.
are just talking to them normally. And also, and like I said earlier before the show, is and tying it to Superman and Wonder Woman. So many people are say repeat like parrots that if Superman and Wonder Woman are together, that they will be like the gods and think of themselves as above and all of that
Thanks,
blah.
Injustice.
Right, but again, Injustice is a video game that makes everyone just unlikable, and it's basically Mortal Kombat with DC skin. But how the gods are depicted here, they are purposely, designed to be very beautiful. Everyone is beautiful in this, animation, but you know, trying to be larger than life, trying to be, superior. But when you watch and comprehend and, following every character's arc, they're very flawed. They have quote unquote human emotions and the drama. It's just on a larger scale. Zeus with his baby mama drama of 50 million baby mamas and 50 million kids.
Oh, jeez.
um, you know, and the fact that you see how in his very womanizer ways, he still falls in love.
Hmm.
And you see Hera as the queen of the gods. She's supposed to be this perfect, she's supposed to symbolize, represent marriage and, represent this empowerment of women. But yet she is the one that is scorned and hateful. And she has to, put up with a cheating husband. And that is very much resonates and relatable to reality. So for anyone to say that the gods that you can't relate, you have to be creative.
You have to actually think,
And
in other words. And here's the thing: the whole relating, or like the whole a human love interest grounds them. That is extremely simplistic thinking because first off, Superman does not need grounding because he grew up on Earth his entire damn life. Saying that Lois is the reason why he's grounded ignores the vast contribution of Jonathan and Martha Kent.
just everyone that he's come across throughout, um his childhood on up to college, you know, that they really want to ignore. And it makes it seem like he's Omni Man or something from, that he just came from Krypton as an adult to Earth
Yeah.
and then he met Lois. It'll be different if it was like that, but it's not. And even with Diana, just because she, comes to the outside world at 18, that doesn't mean that she needs Steve, because and that's essentially why Perez changed it for him to be an old man, and more of like a big brother father figure, so that it wasn't that type of love that becomes codependent, and it is weird as a romantic type of love. So and Diana's influence in man's world was Julia and Vanessa. Again, her purpose as a female character is have female empowerment. So her supporting cast for Perez was mainly of females. So and for Tom King to say that his Wonder Woman run is influenced and by Perez and
I don't
his
remember.
origin and everything.
I don't remember in the Perez run Wonder Woman punching her mother in the face.
Right. Or, to say that Perez run is the definitive like origin and everything, but yet you have Steve as like whatever he's supposed to be.
The
It's
romantic
just
love interest, even though he clearly wasn't in that run. In fact, Steve was married to Etta, so that makes no sense. I think the reason why they also don't do that is because in recent years, they've pushed Etta into an LGBT relationship, so or like in that orientation. So I think that's also why they don't like put Steve with Etta even more anymore. Because if you notice in like Wonder Woman Bloodlines, that's kind of
yeah,
where she aligned.
and not only that, but they changed her to be like the I mean that will she can still be like bi. So
True. So they could like go with that. In fact, I even think in Rebirth they paired her with Cheetah apparently, and I'm like,
yeah,
what?
none of Rebirth makes sense. So it's
Yeah, it ain't that an understatement?
right, but but going back to this, it really just like it gave a lot of ideas, first of all, especially because how we are writing the gods within
Hmm.
the stories that we have for Superman and Wonder Woman, and just making them a very dysfunctional family. You have family secrets and stuff like that. You have family betrayals, And it really shows the gods as quote unquote human. And it's basically like a soap opera, and even with the dysfunction and knowing like the weird themes that mythology has, like the implied or the incest type stuff,
Hmm.
the like I said, the baby mama drama is just
Oh my
hilarious
god!
to me.
Oh my gosh! John Byrne would really love this world.
Oh, he honestly, the weirdness and of the gods, the way they depicted you, it really like goes over your head to where like you forget. But I think Byrne would really kind of like make it so explicit that you would just be grossed out. So no, he
Uh,
never
yeah.
touched the gods within 10, no.
Arguably, never touch any superheroes anymore. Because it's kind of funny. This is the one time I'm going to talk about this incident, but it's hilarious. I see so many big time comic book YouTubers saying that, like, yeah, if John Byrne has written, chances are this has happened in it, and it's like even like comic tropes put out a tweet that said that like John Byrne has written a disturbing amount of stories where that happens.
And for that to even be a thing, that he wasn't stopped, it says a lot about editorial
Mm-hmm.
and how they just do not care,
Aren't they
to
supposed to be like protecting the brands of these characters?
they say that, and then it's a whole lot of
Mm-hmm.
controversy stuff. I mean, the only protecting the brand is like with unproblematic stuff like Superman and Wonder Woman being together. But other than that, it's kind of like everything else can slide by for some reason. Um, but
Exactly.
yeah, so Blood of Zeus, I mean, I started it when the uh, first season did come out, but I really didn't just like with going and going. You let it play and you look up and see certain scenes. But when I was actually able to sit and watch it, to watch the second season, and it was kind of like binge watching it the whole way through. It's like, wow, this is a story, to be told, that you can really feel the characters and really. I already loved mythology, the whole thing. But this given a visual and, it really did something to make me love it even more and to really connect it to Superman and Wonder Woman and how, to continue to write Zeus and continue to write especially Hera and introducing even more. And I can't wait to season 3 to hopefully they'll give more of the gods voices, and it can be small character arcs or bigger ones to you know have that as an influence. But yeah,
Now,
this
now let me
uh
ask you this: which of the seasons did you enjoy more? I enjoyed two more, honestly, because there was more that they were dealing with.
I would say because I watched it like all the way through, it kind of was equal.
Hmm. I see.
Um, but I will say probably season 2 because
Hmm.
with okay, with season 1 it was a setup. And the thing is the big fight of it really made Hera unlikable.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like she was unlikable, but you understood why she was so angry. And like I said, as a scorned woman, and seeing her husband, knowing how many kids he has, knowing that he is a liar, and using his kid, especially Apollo, um, as to trick her, as like to pretend that he is the one that is having these concubines, whatever. And then to know that like Hera is not liked by Apollo um and Athena and stuff like that. But then in season two, you see how sympathetic she is and how remorseful she is as well. And she learned from how she just let her anger get the best of her and she wants to, change her ways. So it's kind of like now I'm invested to want to see how she continues to change to be better.
Yeah,
And
I bet you she's gonna be the one to help Huron in season 2 and season 3.
yeah. So and she will, even though it would hurt her, it's still the fact that she will probably accept him. And it feels like that's what she's been doing. She knows how um Zeus is, but it's still the fact that she tries to see the good in him and she still obviously loves him. So she has to accept his ways and his and all of his kids,
I
you
mean,
know.
she even testifies for him at Zeus's trial in the underworld.
Yeah, which honestly, that would not be she had all the right to dog him out,
Hmm.
you know, but she didn't. She stood up for him, and that is basically what wives do in reality. So again, for people to say that acting like gods, honestly, it just depends on how it's written.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it
I mean,
yeah.
Charles Sewell wrote them as average people. By the way, speaking of underworld, isn't it kind of funny that the design for Hades makes him look like Kratos?
Yes, that honestly, it,
I'm not
that
complaining. It looks badass, but still, I was like,
yeah,
okay, Kratos, I see what you're doing.
and it is so like I guess the gods, you're supposed to have conflictions with
Hmm.
them. Like they aren't, some of them aren't supposed to be liked or
Hmm.
anything, but you felt so bad for Hades
Yeah.
and Persephone and their kids, because of how they can't be together for the spring and how Demeter, how she was like the monster-in-law,
Hmm.
how she was so stubborn and such a clingy mom and hateful mother-in-law. Again, they put the gods in very familiar situations of reality of, yeah, you will have monster-in-laws. You will have um maybe separation that's out of your control with your family, make sacrifices and stuff like that. And even Heron and his brother, you
Hmm.
know, that my long lost brother type story that has happened in reality.
Hmm.
And that resentment, that family resentment, from all the drama and generational, trauma and stuff like that. This is all dealt with the gods. And again, it's so relatable. So when writing, it all depends on your creativity. And if you look at them in such a simplified manner, you won't relate to them. You
I
won't,
know.
they won't resonate and you
Well,
won't
actually,
get
here's
it.
the thing, though. In ancient times, when people heard stories about superheroes, aka the gods, they identified with the struggles of these characters. That's why they told those stories. So the very fact that they're like gods, and I'm like, but in the ancient times when these were the comic books of the time, if you will, people identified with them.
Yeah, and their stories would be inspirational, even if it is a larger than life story. Um, it's still the message of it, you know, that is what you get from it. So yeah, anyone who is going against the gods or whatever, it's like you are really shutting off any type of comprehension or thinking, or you are just limiting yourself, that you think that everyone has to be mortal to understand. And no, that is really just even in reality, a dog can have more humanity than an actual human. I've seen, and maybe it is taught, but you see like these the pet dogs or whatever, who take a blanket and put it on a baby or something like that. You know, you see certain things like that, that the dog isn't a human, but they have this certain sense of protection. They have this certain sense of, you know, being lovable and caring. And so to just say that to have humanity is just a mortal thing, and especially even an American thing, because sometimes Americans do tend to, you know, try to villainize other cultures and make it seem like they are, not people. And it's a shame that in 2024, that is still somewhat a world that we live in.
Hmm.
And if people are already just thinking of that with fictional characters and how strong it is, of that type of human superiority or whatever, it's like, yeah, that is the reality that we live in, and it should stop. Like for me, it really should stop. And if we had um more examples of showing characters of different ethnicities, of different, of the gods. And even with DC and Marvel doesn't really have that type of problem, because they have the X-Men. And like we said
Yeah.
earlier, X-Men, they unapologetically show the xenophobic nature of the world and how they deal with it, and they actually go through it. DC, on the other hand, is they shy away from it, and they want to simplify it, gloss over it, or make it seem like, it's so easily to pass. All you have to do is reject who you are and accept like what is the norm.
Yeah, John Byrne.
Yeah, and then it's all okay. And
I'm
and,
like,
and
no,
that
that's
is
not
why,
okay.
right, and that is why these characters are so stagnant too. And they don't relate. So many Superman fans want to say Superman is relatable and he's this and that, but it's kind of like you're talking about it, but it's not being shown. You know,
Exactly.
I want to see
So,
Superman.
yeah, go
Uh,
ahead. It's fine.
Real quick, I want to see Superman struggle. I want to see him actually have the thought of Krypton, just like New 52.
Mhm.
He honored New 50. He honored Krypton. He valued Jarrell and Laura, while also equally valuing Jonathan and Martha. And you know, at his end, his very premature end, he thanked all of them. And he um to see the statue of them all really showed how he is a far better, superior iteration as the modern golden age Superman that he should be.
Exactly. So, I think it's a good place to leave it. Drop below your thoughts on Justice League: The New Frontier. Fantastic book, fantastic movie. And Britt, how about you tease us with what you got coming up?
Okay, so like we said, Blood of Zeus has just completely
Hmm.
altered everything. And so, with every story with the gods, I'm going back to putting in a little bit more depth and really just, especially again, Hera is the character that really I've latched onto. So, with the Mother's Day story that I had with her, I'm putting more, emphasis on her feelings and her uh, perspective. and especially with adding Austria and Hippolyta and Diana to really form, this bond between the queen of the gods, the queen of the Amazons, and then basically the heirs of the gods and the Amazons.
Heck
Um,
yeah.
we also have the Athens story, which again, it has something to do with the gods
Hmm.
and shelter. Just every story, I really now want to emphasize on the gods even more. And I know that with my, great collaborator, you will
Oh,
have
by the way,
more.
I got 2 more ideas during this episode.
Yeah, I figured. So let me go ahead and grab some tissues. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so it's really exciting to now be so focused on, more stories with the gods and even more so of the messages that we want to um, put out about Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship, especially within our now getting even bigger, expanding more shelterverse.
Heck yeah. Oh, the Shelterverse is I'm really excited to work more on the Shelterverse. I got tons of ideas. So stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lane. She belongs to General Zod. Zoe is the Maxabat for life.